So hello, everyone. We're at quorum. We've got about 120 people registered for this evening, and right now we've got about 70 people in. It's been a while since we left, and you're all doing this little welcome thing where you're writing how many times you've been to a meeting. And many of you have been saying it's a blur and you don't actually know how many. And some people are saying, really? It's been 9? It's interesting, though, after 9 meetings, I can see that there's starting to be more familiar faces. Less of you are strangers than you were 9 meetings ago. But I am aware that there are new regional council reps and guests here today. So please take some time, if you're just coming in, to put your name in the chat, your community of faith, and if this is your first meeting or your second or your third. And you'll notice too, as you look, that there are some people from corporations and from outside the region here tonight as guests. So we welcome them as well. So we're at quorum. So I constitute this meeting in the name of Jesus Christ, the one true head of the church, and by the authority vested in me by the Horseshoe Falls Regional Council for whatever business may properly come before it. And as I do so, I invite all of us to commit to a particular vision of church, one that believes in the importance of all our relations, and one that insists that it is connection that is sacred. Our relationship with the land is sacred, and that relationship changes. And if you look at the Regional Council website, you'll see that Reverend Gary Clark from Antler River has put a new land acknowledgement on the website because he recognizes that our context has changed. And so I want to highlight a little bit of that for you. Gary wrote, "Friends, this pandemic has highlighted for the first time in a generation the connectedness of the whole world. Our health and future is entwined with the health and future of every person on the planet. Perhaps it will lead us to the understanding that just as our present is linked with all people, so are we linked to our past. Our history as a country is linked with how we have treated the first peoples of this land. History and the Truth and Reconciliation Committee findings reveals the immeasurable damage done to the first peoples of Canada when we disrespected their culture, teachings, and stewardship of the land, and the damage that we have done to ourselves, to our denomination, and the health of our Commonwealth. As we seek health and wholeness moving into the post-pandemic world, may we never cease to acknowledge our work and our commitment to work towards wholeness of the first peoples of this land. We acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Adirondack, the Neutral Nation, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the Anishinaabe. Our gain has come at a cost to these people. It's not just our relationship to the land that is sacred, but our relationship with each other within the church. And so as we meet as Christ's body today, we acknowledge that getting along amongst ourselves and all our relations is difficult. That relations are fragile and precious, requiring constant attention. And so as we always do, we take time to remind ourselves of our commitment to be brave. And that's just to be accountable for the impact of both our words and our silence. And it may be helpful to remember that sometimes when we say nothing, that's not helpful. To reflect on our biases and name them, to actively listen, to vocalize questions that arise from our learning, and to encounter new ideas with curiosity and wonder. Our relationship with those who are different from us is also sacred. Horseshoe Falls Regional Council, along with WOW and Antler River, have adopted the affirming statement of safety, sanctuary, and unconditional love. And striving to be faithful followers of Jesus in our time and place, Horseshoe Falls Regional Council will continue to remove barriers to the life and work of the Regional Council and Society, committing ourselves to be open in the Spirit. Let us pray. Holy Mystery. At General Council this year, our theme was, Who do you say that I am? And it was an interesting theme. We considered this most important of questions. We fumbled for answers. We listened to past moderators tell us who they think you are, Jesus. And we ourselves tried to pin you down. And yet we confess that, like Paul, we found ourselves seeing through a glass darkly, experienced difficulty with persistent thorns and biases, and that in spite of the best intentions, we frequently found ourselves doing the very thing we hate over and over again. We realize that who we say Jesus is may be many things. Who Jesus is to us, certainly, but perhaps more importantly, Jesus, the divine human, is who we realize that we need to be and who we need to have present in our lives. And so answering this question is all about courageously articulating our vision of how we wish Christ's presence to enliven our church, making it a place of grace, safety, sanctuary, and unconditional love. Help us work towards our aspiration to be your people over these 2 days and in our work together. Help us partake of the holy. May this meeting show us who we are today. And may this meeting help us as we struggle to make our sacred vision a reality, as we struggle to say who Jesus is. May we become a little more the church that we say that we are. Amen. So our online leadership team for tonight, I'd like to introduce to you all. And you know many of them. You have me, I'm your president. I'm Robert Lawson. Our chair of business and agenda is Wendy Loudon. Our parliamentarian is Judith Gilliland. Our equity team support member is Yvonne Wright. Our chaplain is Eleanor Scarlett. And Eleanor, if I could ask you to put your cell phone number in the chat, because if anyone would needs your assistance, they can reach out to you, I believe, that way. Our executive minister is Cheryl Ann Stadelbauer-Sampa, and our recording secretary for tonight is Sue Dulaban. And our tech support personnel for this meeting is John Neff. And John, thank you very much for coming and helping us. You don't even, you're a good friend of this region. So I'm going to turn the proceedings over to our Chair of Business and Agenda, Wendy Loudon, and she will go through our opening and procedural motions.
The opening and procedural motions are as follows. Adopt the agenda as circulated and authorize the Agenda and Business Committee to make any changes as necessary. Approve the minutes of the meeting of 2022-05-26. Receive the following minutes of the following meetings, and I'm not going to read all that out, but if you note at the bottom of the dates, the minutes are posted on the website that's there for you. Confirm the appointment of Michael Bale to the Human Resources Commission. Appoint Judith Gilliland as parliamentarian. Appoint Wendy Loudon as Chair, Agenda and Business Committee. Name President Robert Lawson, Chair, name President Robert Lawson, Chair, Agenda and Business Committee, Wendy Loudon, Executive Minister Cheryl Ann Stadelbauer-Sampa, and Executive Assistant Sue Doulaban as the Agenda and Business Committee. Name Regional Council staff members as scrutineers. Set the bounds of the meeting as the Zoom call and Fonthill United Church, Fonthill, Ontario. Make the designated representative from any United Church ministry other than a congregation, which has been invited to become a community of faith by entering into covenant with the Regional Council, a member of the Regional Council for this meeting. Make all guests corresponding members. Set the deadline for new business, and this is one to write down if you have anything you'd like to submit. Set the deadline for new business to be submitted to the Agenda and Business Committee as 9 a.m. Saturday, October 15th, 2022. So that's 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Adopt the following method for dealing with proposals for action by the Regional Council, and you can read through those. And I was asked just before we started that I let everyone know that you will be receiving in your emails a new link for tomorrow morning's meeting. So please don't use this one. And that's what I have here. I'm not sure, Cheryl Ann, if I'm moving this or if you're moving it. Okay. Then I make a motion that we receive and pass this as written.
President Robert, I'll second that.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or have anything to discuss about that motion? Okay. Then I guess we're ready to take it to vote, and we're going to do this by a poll. So representatives can vote. Guests who are not members of the Regional Council, if you could refrain from voting, that would be good. I know it's tempting. And that vote has passed. So we've built in some time for you to spend together over and over again in feedback. We know that you're missing time to talk about church, to talk about God, and to talk about your experience, your faith experiences together. So we're going to continue a little bit on with the theme from General Counsel of Who Do You Say That I Am? When Jesus and his disciples were near the town of Caesarea Philippi, he asked them, "What do people say about the Son of Man?" And the disciples answered, "Some people say you are John the Baptist, or maybe Elijah, or Jeremiah, or some other prophet." And then Jesus asked, "But who do you say I am?" It's a hard question to answer, isn't it? On the one hand, it's a personal question. And on the other hand, especially when we are meeting as a regional council or as a body, it's a corporate question. When we answer that question, we learn much about ourselves as individuals. And when we ask it as a church, we learn much about who we are as church. Asking this question is a little bit like being brave enough to look into a mirror and see ourselves as we really are. And it takes a lot of courage to see the person, the church, and the community that who we say Jesus is makes us today, and where that identity is taking us. For our time of community building tonight, we're going to break out into groups in order to have a little bit of this important discussion together. We could not all be GC commissioners this year, but now's your chance to do and considering the overarching theme of that event. And so please use this time to get to know each other, deepen your relationships, and perhaps, who knows, grow. So we're going to have some time in breakout rooms. When you're done, you just come back in. We're not going to have any of you report. This is time for you together. And if staff wants to go into breakout rooms, they can go into breakout rooms too. And you'll have about 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 20, yeah. So I think most people are back. You've got a little bit of flavor of GC of the General Counsel. And we thought talking about who do you say that I am might be a good segue into having some of our General Counsel commissioners report on the General Counsel. So I'm going to turn this meeting over to some of the commissioners.
So I wanted to do just a brief introduction of our process. And, you know, for those of us who have attended the previous GC meetings, this was an entirely new experience. And rather than getting on a plane, train, automobile, or perhaps a bus, or driving with other commissioners, most of us went to our office. We may have gone to a designated office in our home where we could close the door to ensure quiet, or we may have carved out a space in our dining room, kitchen, or den where we could guarantee being interrupted by a favorite pet. We did this on an almost weekly basis for 7 months as we conducted the business of GC 44 that in previous years, we would have completed in 7 days. General Counsel 44 was constituted on February 2nd, 2022. And weekly learning sessions began on March 3rd and continued as needed until May 5th. These learning sessions averaged 20 presentations per week and provided commissioners the opportunity to receive a brief video presentation from the author or authors of each proposal. Discussion sessions took place via video groups and took place during morning and afternoon sessions on June 17th, 18th, and 19th. These were followed by way forward proposals that were posted on June 27th, along with an invitation for participants to post comments and thoughts. And this process continued in July with the last session on July 25th. In the discussion groups, we came to consensus on our issues that were presented to us, and we presented as feedback, which was shared with the other members. And it closed with the installation of the moderator. And at this point, I will turn it over to Yvonne so that she can go into a little bit more detail on some of the proposals that we that we looked at and came to a consensus on and voted on. Yvonne?
So thank you, Pat. Thank you, President Robert. It was my greatest honor to be a commissioner to GC 44. There were over 50 proposals that were presented to GC 44. Did we vote on all of them? No. And this is not any different from other general counsels that I have gone to where we did not get through, commissioners did not get through all the work. And whatever work we did not get through went back to the General Counsel Executive to be actioned. In this case, they have the notes that were taken from the discussion groups that will help them to guide their action for those proposals that had gone back to them. So I will just highlight a few of the decisions that the proposals that we voted on. And the first one, and these are not in any particular order, I just chose some of them. So designated lay minister was a very passionate proposal that we spoke about with a lot of passion, because DLMs are very important in the church, and to see them as in an ordered stream is what they're looking for. They want to be recognized as such. So the council returned to a discussion on designated lay ministers stemming from an earlier motion on ministry leadership. And this was part B of GCE 06. The business table proposed that the General Counsel Executive be asked to consider this challenging question of the status of DLMs. As an interim measure, regional councils are encouraged to grant license to perform the sacraments to retired DLMs who are providing Sunday supply to communities of faith. And this proposal was carried. We talk about the strategic plan of the United Church. I think we'll see that video sometimes later. And so we voted on this as well. And that is to embrace then deep spirituality, bold discipleship, and daring justice. And that's how we are going to be doing our work going forward. Number 3, challenging anti-Semitism in the United Church. I don't know if you have heard, but during one of our learning sessions around the Palestine-Israel proposals, we had an unwelcome comment that was perhaps the person who might have said it wasn't aware that the mics were open, and it really brought the learning session to a halt, with moderator Richard closed off in a very meaningful, inspiring prayer. Out of that came a proposal that we should address anti-Semitism in the United Church. So this proposal was addressed, and that also was carried. Addressing a proposal introduced in June, the Council considered and passed a motion to develop an education program about anti-Semitism, ensuring that the program include advocacy and animation throughout the church. So we will be doing that. Another big one that had a lot of conversation, and some people in my discussion group at any rate felt a little bit uncomfortable, thinking that perhaps if we move this motion that we were going to divide the church between our Indigenous sisters and brothers and the church, but that's not the case. So this proposal was fully supported, the recognition of noting the importance of moving forward on proposal GS 10 to keep commitments the United Church made in affirming the call to the church at GC 43. Okay, so the Council directed General Secretary to identify and remove all structural barriers to developing and sustaining the autonomous Indigenous church within the United Church of Canada. What does that mean? The Indigenous people, they want to have their own ways of doing church, but at the same time still walk along with the United Church. They're not going to be separate, we're going to be together, but they want to be able to do church as they need it to be, to maintain their own culture and learnings. So we've moved that motion, and that was carried as well. It is a hope that they will report back to the General Council of GC 45. The principle-based approach to justice work in the United Church, again, that was proposed by the General Executive, I believe. The Council supported this proposal. Based on the discussion groups, it was suggested to have the participation of the National Indigenous Church and the timelines of the work. It was noted that it may be helpful to include an additional framework of using public international legal frameworks when they are appropriate in our justice work. And that too was carried. Supporting the process for ministry personnel, this is an important one that we felt that needed to be carried, that it needs to some work to be done on that. And this is about ministers who are coming in from elsewhere, where they have to go through the immigration process, where they have to get their visa, and how to get into the, and how to become then a permanent resident of Canada while doing ministry. Some of them, many of them would have a lot of difficulties in going through that process. And I know for sure that we've lost ministers because they weren't able to navigate the immigration process as they needed to. So with many conversations, again, this was approved. So the council supports this proposal. This proposal is another way to live into becoming an intercultural church. There was support for the need of education regarding the strengths and challenges and opportunities in supporting immigration of ministries seeking positions in the United Church. It was also suggested that we would work with ecumenical partners to make this happen, and perhaps even some immigration legal personnel who are qualified in this area. Climate justice, of course, has always been on for general councils, for the ones that I have gone to anyways, and this is no different. The big piece of this, though, is to reduce emissions by 80% by 2030 instead of 2050. So that too was carried. We can go to number 8. This one is also one that I think is important. That should have been the decriminalizing of the illicit substance. I think that's the wrong heading that is there. So the council passed a motion where the church is going to decriminalize the illicit
purple thing in that.
Yeah. Illicit substances for personal use, as well as advocating with the federal government. The motion enables working towards harm reduction practices across the church, providing resources for local conversations and pastoral education for ministry personnel, including training on Lawson administration for each community of faith. And that was carried. Our big thing is, of course, the election of our moderator, the Right Reverend Dr. Carmen Lansdowne. This was unanimously elected. She was the only candidate for moderator, and rightly so in this time when we are working so hard on our relationship with our Indigenous brothers and sisters again. It was perhaps others may not want to put their names forward just to allow her to become our moderator. So even though she was perhaps acclaimed by the Constitution of the United Church, we still had to take it to a vote, and that was carried. So that overall, I think, or GC was, for me, was another wonderful experience that I had, and just hope that for the next 3 years we can carry out all the proposals, bring them to fruition of some kind, that we can see some growth and changes in the United Church of Canada.
We're just going to look at the video of the strategic plan for the United Church, just because some of you may not have seen it.
Deep spirituality.
Deep spirituality.
Une spiritualité profonde.
Deep spirituality.
Deep spirituality.
Bold discipleship.
Une vie de disciple
Bold
dynamique.
discipleship.
Bold discipleship.
Bold discipleship. Une quête audacieuse de justice.
Daring justice.
Daring justice.
Daring justice.
Daring justice.
These are words that express the intent of all the major statements made by the United Church of Canada over the last number of years.
We live in a world that is largely individualistic, and when I think of discipleship, I think of commitment to God, commitment to a life following Christ, but also commitment to one another.
It's really about how we're working to live and do our ministry together as this United Church of Canada.
You have to dare to love We have to dare to dream of a world in which love reigns. And I think this is the ultimate test for modern Christians.
Whether it's men in the world, justice-seeking, justice-living church, towards 2025. It's found in our Song of Faith and in the New Creed.
Ceux-ci sont les piliers de qu'est-ce que ça veut dire d'être l'Église de l'avenir. C'est sur cette base que nous pourrions être capables de répondre à l'appel de Dieu.
These words,
Deep spirituality.
Bold discipleship.
Daring justice.
is an expression of who we are as the United Church of Canada.
This is our call. Let's make it our commitment.
So Wendy's going to talk to us now about how we're going to make those commitments that we made at General Counsel happen.
So what is next? We can move down to the first slide, I think, there. Our discussion groups were absolutely amazing, and they were my favorite part of General Counsel. It went on for a long time this year. It was months long, but unless you're part of the process, you don't really understand how we can possibly get things done and decided. And we do, and it's really quite amazing. If you don't go to a general council, you don't get that feeling of work being done and comradeship and being together and being part of the church. Our discussion groups could make one of three decisions on each proposal. We could accept the proposal, we could take no action, or take no action, or accept it. And so after we decided on each proposal, it would go back, it would be reworded, it would be, each group had a person taking down notes, and the notes are there for our General Counsel executive to go back and look at when they are working on the proposals that went back to them. So even if we didn't take action or decided that something had to go back to executive to decide on, we know that they're still listening to us even though we weren't there. We can go on. Oh, on the spreadsheet. Okay. I had a spreadsheet. I looked at a spreadsheet of all the different proposals and actions that were taken. And some of these were not ones that we talked about. But if we took no action, we took no action. If it was carried or carried with an amendment, that's obviously the way it was. Things could be, I found when I looked on the spreadsheet, some things were postponed, the majority to the next General Council, which will be on October 23. Some things were left unfinished because with that many proposals, it's impossible to get to everything. But I do believe that things were prioritized basically correctly and in agreement that the things that went unfinished were not sorry, my phone just rang. The ones that were the most important went forward and were worked on the most. And we have one remit coming, and I'm not going to pretend and tell you I know a whole lot about what that's going to be. It'll be about the Indigenous Circle commitment, and that will go out to congregations at a later time. So you will be part. And so when you say now what and where do we go, we have to wait for General Counsel meeting results. I know they've had one executive meeting already and reading the minutes. I know they've already worked on some of the things that were referred to them. And that's encouraging. We have to wait for the GC 44 October 23rd. We have to wait for the remit to come out. but there's more that we can do besides just wait. I truly believe that we need to make sure that we and our congregations are knowledgeable when the remit happens and know exactly what's going on. There is time now to make sure we all understand the importance and historical meaning of the remit. We can pray for our new moderator and the General Counsel executive in our regular prayers. This is not an easy time to be involved in church government, and everything that has always sort of been normal is not normal anymore. And that's because of COVID, but because of the way the world is changing. I love the video that came just before I spoke, because I believe that now is the time in our prayers and in our actions, when we take this information back to our congregations, that we do need to dare and be brave now. Because if we're not now, I don't believe that things will happen, and that would be tragic. I believe we need to dare to love more, to love outside our congregations and love our world and spread our love and let people know that we're here. I believe that now is the time that we need to dare to believe that we are here for a purpose and we can do it. And I truly, truly think we need to dare to try harder, to belong more, to do more. If you've never been to a general council, try to go to one, because it's seeing the work of the church gives you faith that work is being done when you can't really see it. And you can keep yourself updated on the United Church website and on the Horseshoe Falls Regional Council website, because if you're not updated and you don't know what's going on, there's no way you can celebrate yourself either. And I think we can celebrate our church and our future because of General Counsel. And I think we can get from this, which is the way I feel sometimes too, to this, just walking together in God's peace, because we are not alone. We live in God's world. Amen.
We'll show you another video from General Counsel, and this is of one of the highlights. It's a sung reading of the scripture from Matthew, and I'll have John pull that up. It's lovely.
Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, Jesus asked them, "Who do the people say that I am? Who do the people say that I am? Do they understand? Can they comprehend? Who do they say that I am?" They replied, "Some say you are John the Baptist. Others say you are Elijah. And still others say you are one of the prophets." And Jesus looked them right in the eye, and he said, But you, who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Do you comprehend? Who do you say that I am? Peter, struck in his heart, answered, "Why, Lord, you are the Messiah." Who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am?
So we meet a lot as a church, and amazing things happen when we meet, and that was one of the amazing moments of General Counsel. One of the meetings that I was able to attend over the past year as your president was the annual meeting of the Toronto United Church Council. Kate Young, our former president, and John Hurst, our treasurer, are both members of the Toronto United Church Council. And at their meeting this year, this Extension Council, which resources our region, talked about how they actually predate the United Church of Canada. The Toronto United Church Council was actually originally a Presbyterian organization that was formed before the United Church. Now, at the meeting of TUC, I was amazed at the way that in asking, who do you say that I am? This very august, historical body of the church was so robustly engaging with the contemporary call to the church and with contemporary reality. They see the church moving to a more online presence, for instance, and they have taken the whole United in Learning platform and made another platform which is, I believe, far more superior, and they're actually giving it to the church. And all of our online meetings through United in Learning now will be hosted through that platform. A very impressive group. And I've asked Ron Ewart, the Associate Director, Executive Director of TUCS, to make a short presentation to you tonight. And I know that you'll be impressed as I was. And there's Ron.
Thank you, Robert. I think we're going to have some slides as well, but thank you for your invitation to share this short presentation this evening about TUCC. It was wonderful to have you online with us at our last annual meeting. And it's also great to see, as I went through the different screens, there's at least 20 different names that I recognize, so I don't feel a stranger amongst you at all. And as I talk this evening, there may well be things that you discover about TUCC when you go, oh, those are the people who do that, because our connection with Horseshoe Falls Regional Council is really much stronger than some of you might imagine it to be. Well, while we're finding those slides, because the introduction is just a very similar one to the one I've got here. One correction, Robert, we were actually a Methodist body at the beginning.
I wondered about that.
The Methodist Social Union in Toronto, it was called. And so it gets quite frightening when people say, gosh, that was your 129th annual meeting back in June. But I don't know how many fans of Doctor Who there are at the meeting, or who know Doctor Who, that UK series, where there have been a series of doctors and the character morphs every time they change the actor who's going to be the doctor for the next series. And in some ways, TUCC is a bit like Doctor Who. Over those 129 years, we've had a series of different names, and our work has taken a different shape. But in more recent years, it's become focused with this title that you can see there, Connecting Resources with Ministry. And that's what I really want you to think about as you listen this evening, that we see ourselves as an agency working in a much broader area than the name would suggest, to really bring resources to the people who are doing ministry, which is your congregations, your ministries, your regional council. And our job is to try and support and provide the framework that we can with the resources that we have been gifted with to steward, to help you do the real ministry work on the ground. Now, since the reorganization of the United Church in 2019, TUCC has been glad to share its support of United Ministries in a much wider area than we did previously. We were really a corporation working primarily in the former Toronto Conference and amongst its presbyteries. So it was always wider than just the city or town of Toronto. But when 2019 came along, we had to make a decision. Did we stay within that smaller area? Or did we say, no, we have gifts and we have possibilities that we can share on a much wider basis? And our board took the decision to sort of see Central and Southern Ontario really as the place where we could exercise a ministry. We had particular connections with the regions that you can see on the map there marked in blue. But to the east and west, just because they're in green doesn't mean that we wouldn't work there. It's just the blue ones had the initial contacts with congregations and particular ministries. So we took the decision there to move the boundaries and to see if we could become both an agency that supports the work that goes on there and also to be a bridge across some of the boundaries that still exist, even though we've changed many of those boundaries. And what I'm going to try and do this evening is just give you a taste of some of the work that we do. And I hope that as I go through, as I said at the beginning, you'll be saying to yourself, oh, those are the people who do that. You already know us. We're already part of the same family. So what does TUCC do? Here we are. This is the formal mission statement that you'd find in our organizational report, which is very nice. Really what you need to do is to come and visit our website, and that's the next slide. John? Yeah. So here's a better picture of what we're about. Let me just say quickly about the people in the picture there. There are some of our directors and committee members, but the gentleman on the right, who is slightly hidden by the buttons, the green buttons, is Doug Smith, the TUCC president. He actually lives in Burlington, and he is one of the 4 directors of TUCC who are members of Horseshoe Falls region. So you've actually got 4 out of 11 of directors controlling the work of TUCC. So you may not have realized that, but you are helping shape in a very strong way the direction that we take. I want you just to look at the blue line across the top, discerning mission, innovative ministry center, loan grant, all that line there. That's really a doorway, each of those buttons, into the work that TUCC does. And what I'm going to be doing is just highlighting a few things which I think may be of use to your ministries and your communities of faith. Robert mentioned being impressed by us thinking about the future of the church. If you like, we're balancing, I think, an organization like TUCC always of managing change. It's dealing responsibly with the church as it is, and also helping to innovate and bring the church as it needs to be, and helping the church make that journey. We started about 3 years ago a center called the Innovative Ministry Center, began trying to develop courses for that center based on some experience we had. And of course, COVID came along and threw us all into the digital age, whether we wanted to be there or not. And we had to switch our plans very quickly to running our courses online. And then it became clear what we really needed to do was to get back in the business of providing the infrastructure, if you like, for the church to do its work. So we've created this platform called ChurchX, and I wonder how many of you have been signing up for United in Learning courses or any other courses with the National Church. You'll find yourself going to this platform. The platform is also providing services across the denominational boundaries, and I find it one of the most exciting things we're doing. You need to go there, have a look, just churchx.ca. You can see the URL at the top there, and you've probably bumped into some of this already if you've been signing up for courses. So this is our way of providing infrastructure. Now, here's a more traditional way that we've been doing that for many, many years. Throughout Shining Waters, we were known as the Friendly Bank. It was a place where congregations could go to borrow money to make necessary repairs, or sometimes even build new churches, which is terrific. And we have been building new churches. We don't always see that, And we're now being able to offer this service, these loans, across the number of regions that you saw on the map there. And that cupola that you see being repaired is actually Emmanuel United Church in Waterloo. So, and we were so glad a few years ago to be able to help East Plains United as they were beginning to develop the new childcare there, to provide the financing for that. So our partnerships are already there with you. Where does money come from to do that kind of work? Well, we created something in 2001 that was quite revolutionary at the time, and it has grown over the 20-odd years to something really substantial. It's called the Investing in Ministry Fund. Most of our loans are made from money from this particular fund. And the way that this works is that TUCC borrows money from congregations who have capital reserves, and we act as the bridge to lend it out to congregations who need to borrow to do capital work. We act as the intermediary. We take no fee for that. We cover some of our administrative expenses. And you can see here from the report I made to investors in this fund that the fund is now at close to $14.5 million that's available for capital work right across all of the regions. We've got 43 investors holding 60 separate investments. And over that year, we were able to give a 4% return. Not high, but steady. Over the last 10 years, we've kept that 4%, and we guarantee a congregation's capital. So if you're a small congregation and you don't want to get in the investment game, come and talk to us about this particular fund. And what you'll know is you really are investing in ministry. We borrow from the church to lend to the church, to help the church be the church. And that's our sense of vocation in this financial area. Let's go to the next one. Property has always been something of the infrastructure TUCC has been involved with. You can see across the pictures at the bottom of this particular snapshot from our website that there's quite a wide range of property work. I want to highlight just two. On the right-hand side, you can see greening church properties. Now that we're working across the boundaries of 4 regions, we're able to make loans from what's called the Sustainable Energy Loan Fund to congregations, which, as the name suggests, is designed to help you green your church. You can borrow money for up to 10 years. For the first 5 years, you pay 0%, and then we go bonkers in the second 5 years and we charge you a whole 1% to keep that fund revolving. If you've gone to Faithful Footprints and got a grant, that's fantastic. You can combine that with a loan from the Sustainable Energy Loan Fund. So we do encourage you, especially with the new General Counsel target of 2030, to come and talk to us. A lovely story, though, behind this is that just the other week, East Central Ontario region made a contribution to that fund of $210,000, doubling the available amount we've got, and said, we don't want to just keep it for East Central Ontario region. We want that to be used across the regions in Southern Ontario. And that's why we're letting TUCC administer that money. So if you were to borrow from this fund, you could well be borrowing money that's been created for you by the churches in Peterborough, in Kingston, and beyond. Let's go to the next slide, John. We're trying to find ways to do experimental work, even in this field, which seems, so deadly dull and so traditional of property management. Here's a clip from a part of our website, which we call Spaces United. It's a picture of 2 churches in the Toronto area, Hummer United and Lansing United Church, where we actually have our offices now. We are managing these 2 new rebuilds, which are really the 2 congregations were able to do a rebuild, but then were faced with the problem of how do they continue the ongoing management of it as volunteer capacity decreases. And so we're carrying out an experiment by being the property managers, and we've taken on staff to be able to do that. I don't think that every church in every place can be managed professionally because there's a cost to that. but perhaps we're going to be able to see and pioneer ways in which this kind of work can be done in the future. We're also doing property management work on behalf of regional councils. You might like to know, in partnership with Kindred Works, we're looking after properties in your area, Binkley, Cawthra Park, and St. Giles and Hamilton. The day-to-day management is coming to TUCC for that. And on top of that, we do 20 properties for Shining Waters and 3 properties in East Central Ontario region. Some of you may have received this in an e-news or a leaflet that's been passed around. It's asking people to nominate folks for the Bailey Volunteer Service Award. This is a way that we try to help the church recognize young people. It's difficult for every congregation to have special ways to support their youth and encourage them and thank them for their ministries. So we created this award thanks to a gift that came from a gentleman called Mr. Bailey. And we're using this to provide 12 volunteer awards every year. A $500 gift goes to the person and they receive a certificate, and the congregation is able to nominate the people for these awards. And Horseshoe Falls Regional Council has been among the nominees. 2022, so Hazel from Munns is receiving an award this year, but in every year since 2019, the broadening of the boundaries, there's been somebody from Horseshoe Falls who has received one of these awards. So it's just fantastic that congregations connect with us and say, please honor those people. That Bailey Fund, of course, is one of the ways in which TUCC works, a bit like the foundation, where we have people who have made gifts directed towards ministry, and we're able to do that with a local and a regional focus in the use of those monies. So that's my lightning tour of little snippets of the very broad work that TUCC does. I hope you'll go and visit our website and take a tour. I hope while you're there, you may have seen the tab in some of the slides that you'll sign up for the monthly TUCC e-news, and I hope that you'll sign up for the regular, what we call a property and mission e-news, which we haven't talked about tonight, but is tucked away there on the website. And please do, if you have any questions or you want to explore something, ask whether you would fit for some of the loans, some of the grants that we have available, just call us, come and have a chat. We are ready, and we really want to be your partners in the ministry that you're called to exercise in the place where you're called to be. And there's our information. So maybe I can hand back, and happy to answer any questions if that's going to be helpful at this stage.
Yes, thank you very much, Ron. You'll see that there's some very kind comments already in the chat about your presentation. If anyone does have any questions, we could probably take 1 or 2 questions to Ron. Does anyone have a question or have something they'd like to ask Ron? You can enter it in the chat, or you could put up your hand.
Yeah.
John?
I'm the treasurer of Alton United Church Extension Council, and we suffer from the same fate as other kind of organizations where the directors are getting older. So we have worked out an agreement with Tuck where we're going to dissolve HUSEC and gift the assets to Tuck. And with a mortgage that's coming due, that's going to be about $900,000. So this will be a great way to help further the activity of what we're trying to do. And I thank Ron for helping me help make this happen.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and there's a lovely pattern that's developing. We've got conversations already with the Peterborough Presbytery Extension Council. They've done the same thing. And over in Kingston, the Four Winds, they call that a development corporation. They're doing the same sort of plan. So we can, because we have staff and we have that organization. We've lasted 129 years. I think we've got a few more years in us. We'll be able to carry on that fine work that you've started.
Can I ask a question?
Barb? Yes, go ahead, Barb.
Yeah, Ron, I'm really excited about what you have to offer. And I struggle as the rep for my church to feel like I can fully explain what you just explained to me. Would you be willing to speak to our council? I know we're going through some work on our church and some things. I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know if other people feel like it's hard to share that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And the wonderful thing is we can do all this electronically now, so we don't have to pollute the atmosphere and the traveling. Very, very glad to do that.
I'd also note, Barb, that we record our sessions and we post them on our Regional Council YouTube. So you could also take the clip of Ron's presentation here and share it with your council. But we might not get it up for a couple of weeks.
The other thing that is really good, if you want to talk to Tux or talk to Ron, it's really easy to send him an email. It's Ron, no fancy spelling, and at tucc.ca. So many people are saying in the chat how much they like this presentation, and Ron, thank you very much.
My pleasure. It's been great to be with you.
I'm going to turn the floor over quickly to Wendy Loudon, our Chair of Agenda and Business, for a final reminder before we close the Vespers.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. Just a quick reminder that we are starting tomorrow with a new, what's it called?
A new Zoom link.
New Zoom link. Thank you. And it will be emailed to you, so don't come on with the one you used today, tomorrow. And also that the deadline for new business is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And you can bring your new business forward by emailing either myself at wendyaloudon@gmail.com or Cheryl Ann at csampa@united-church.ca. And that's all I have. We'll see you at 9:30 tomorrow morning.
So we're going to conclude our service tonight with some Vespers. And I realized when I was asked to do these that we hardly ever do Vespers in the United Church. And I realized because we hardly ever do Vespers that I don't know how to do them. So we're going to do them in a way that I made up. And I'm going to start off by reading you a little bit of scripture. And as I read it, I'm going to invite you to write in the chat room where the scripture is from. I was asleep, but dreaming. The one I love was at the door, knocking and saying, "My darling, my very own, my flawless dove, open the door for me. My head is drenched with evening dew, but I had already undressed and bathed my feet. Should I dress again and get my feet dirty?" Then my darling's hand reached to open the latch, and my heart stood still. When I rose to open the door, my hands and my fingers dripped with perfume, and I yearned for him while he spoke to me. But when I opened the door, my darling had disappeared. I searched and shouted, but I could not find him. There was no answer. And we have a number of people who identified it correctly. It's from the Song of Songs. Evening services were once very important. Scripture tells us that God divided the day into two. There is the time when the sun hides itself and the moon comes out. Evening, night, and the early morning hours. And there is the time when the sun reveals itself, the dawn. the morning hours, high noon, tea time. And historically, we know that the faithful used to gather at different times all through all 24 hours in the daylight and at the evening. Now, morning services are usually peppy, aren't they? In them, we give thanks for having made it through the night, surviving our dreams and our nightmares, and committing to the recreation of a new day. And we sing songs like, "Welcome, happy morning. This is the day that God has made. Rejoice and be glad." It's easy to know how to pray and how to worship in the morning. Evening services in the history of the church were also important. They laid the day aside and prepared us for the night, for rest, relaxation, and recreation. And just a few generations ago, United Churches used to frequently have a morning and an evening service on Sunday. But Vespers, evening services, are sadly hardly ever celebrated today. Most churches have perhaps 2 evening services a year, Christmas Eve and perhaps a Blue Christmas service. I do know a few churches that have jazz vespers once a month, and I know a few that have Teze services maybe every quarter. This is unfortunate, I think, because the spirituality of the evening and of the night, what we do at night, how we prepare ourselves at night, is important. Half of our lives are spent in bed, and when it is night, we spend our time in that bed because we are so vulnerable. At night, we cannot see as clearly as we might like. We stumble about. A few night owls might stay up and stare into a computer screen, but night is a time most of us escape into after the challenges of the day. And indeed, when we do enter the night, when we dream, everything changes. Our way of interacting to the world changes. The mind, the intellect, the senses, our breathing, our body temperature, everything changes. Everything goes on low, and we turn off for a while. You know, as I've been reflecting on this message, I can't help but wonder if a return to services in the evening might be a good idea. The prayers that we say in the evening are different than the prayers that we say in the morning. As children, we were taught to pray to God to protect us during the night, but many of us don't even pray at night. And we tell ourselves that we're safe as we turn into our Egyptian cotton sheets, turn down the night light on our bedside tables and the soft music, and allow ourselves to fall asleep. And yet, if truth be told, night is anything but the something we should be confident about. Eli Wiesel, in his book Night, detailing his experiences at Auschwitz with his little brother, says of the night, "Bite your lips, little brother. Don't cry. Keep your anger, your hate for the day, for later. The day will come, but now. Wait. Wait in the night. Clench your teeth and wait." You know, night is the time where if truth be told, many of us clench our teeth and wait. It is a time of terror and uncertainty. Night in Ukraine, Palestine, or Auschwitz is different from night in Southern Ontario, the French Riviera, or Martha's Vineyard. Night in a hospital emergency corridor or homeless shelter is different than night at the opera or a splendid party. Night is dangerous. Night is a time when we do not have as much control as we would like. Night is the time when we can no longer lie to ourselves and we sit up in bed turning the difficult truths of our lives over and over again in our minds. Certainly, night is a dangerous time for the woman in the Song of Songs. She is asleep and dreaming, alone, and a knock comes to her door, and with that knock, her vulnerability, her fragility, her sleepiness, her lack of alertness make the moment terrifying. It's nice and warm in bed. The woman has showered. Should she risk answering the door to a stranger? She knows the person at the door could be everything that she dreams of for her life. It could be her lover. But she knows that on the other side of the door, there's just as great a possibility that it could be something far worse. A wolf, a rapist. And so she debates. My head is drenched with evening dew. Should I dress again and get my feet dirty? She debates, she yearns for her lover, and finally she hears his voice at the door, and finally she braves everything and opens the door. But when she opens the door, her darling has disappeared. She searches and shouts, but could not find him, and there was no answer. And then if you do know what happens to the maiden in the portion following this, you know she does go out into the night to find her lover, only to discover the violence she fears. Night is not a time for sureties. Night is the time when we recognize our need for each other. We recognize that we are vulnerable. It's the time when we can truly celebrate that we are not alone. Night is the time when we can work on our trust, our faith, our bravery, when we can do the hard work of coming to see that the bogeyman under our bed might just be the love we need to stay with us. Morning and day is the time to give God the glory and to work to give God the glory in all that we do as living, working people. Night is also important. It is the time when we let go, when we confront our illusions and meet our failures and realize our great needs and our great hungers. There are things we must do as faithful followers of Christ when we walk in the light. And there are things we must do as faithful followers of Christ when that light is not available. Really, our prayers over the last 2-3 years have been nighttime prayers, haven't they? As we prepare to strip down this evening, reveal ourselves, dream and ponder our day, as we move into the night, may the night reveal itself to us as it really is, full of the power and majesty of God, nearer than a lover's embrace, gentle, terrifying, wild, beautiful, and yet ultimately hopeful. Night is Gethsemane, the place where Jesus struggles, the place where we struggle, and the place where, in spite of our struggles, God is with us. Got a little bit of music we're going to listen to. Stay with us through the night. Just a song at twilight when the lights are low and the flickering shadows softly come and go. Though the heart be weary, sad the day and long, still to us at twilight comes love's old song. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. And even though it's the night, and that face might be moonlight, may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.